Today, I want to walk through the 5 reasons why I host more than 100 client websites on Cloudways and why I'm not planning to switch in 2026. So if you're new here, my name's Josiah Roche, and over the past few years, my team and I have launched and managed over 200 client websites with different hosting providers, not just Cloudways. So I want to talk about that and the 5 reasons, and we'll get right into it, right? So the first reason is that I was just really sick of cheap hosting providers because there was a lot of problems that came with them. And if you've ever used budget hosting providers before, you already know how rough it can get, because if you don't know this already, you're sharing the server with a few hundred websites, right? And it's all kinds of businesses. You don't know what their websites are, how much traffic they're getting, if they're secure, what kind of plugins they've got, etc. And so what happens is your client's website, since it's sharing with all of those, it gets exposed to the risks that have nothing to do with you. And if one of those other websites on that shared server gets hacked, then malware can hit the entire server, and that's when you start seeing like strange files popping up on your website, or you leak sensitive customer information and things like that. And it's not because you inherently did something wrong or built something wrong on your website. It can be because you were sitting on a box that's shared with 100 of other websites out there who don't actually maintain their security or take it seriously. If the website collects leads, bookings, or orders or transactions, there's a huge risk of personal information getting leaked. So now you're talking to a client about data exposure, and the whole thing feels really ridiculous because it's nothing you actually did. You just went with the cheapest budget or hosting option that you could afford. Now, the other thing, and this isn't the second reason, but the other thing was speed, right? Because the server is shared with like 100 other websites on those budget servers like, HostGator or SiteGround or Bluehost, then your performance depends on everyone else's performance. Because if one big store gets hit with a massive traffic spike, then you'll notice that your website slows down from time to time and pages take a lot longer to load. Your TTFB spikes a lot more, and suddenly you're getting a lot of messages from clients asking why the website feels really, really sluggish when nothing happened on your end. Like nothing you can do will change it, right? Unless you, of course, upgrade to the super performance mode on that hosting provider, and eventually they get you onto a private server of some kind where you basically might as well just go over to Cloudways anyway, because that is a private server already and it's much cheaper. And this ties into wherever your server location is, right? So a lot of those budget hosts don't let you actually pick the location, region, or country that your server will sit in or locate in. And the thing is, if you know anything about website speed performance, your website should be hosted closest to where your customers are. And the further away that is from your customers, the slower your website will initially take to load. So your client might be targeting like Australia or United States, but their website might be served from Singapore, and that's where the hosting provider is actually kept. Like you'll find a lot of those like SiteGround and stuff is hosted but in Singapore, and you can imagine how far that is away from the US and Australia. So of course your websites can be slower than someone else who actually is hosting in Australia or the United States closer to where their customers live. So you'll naturally be slower than your competitors, and you feel that in the load time, and Google sees it as well because it's one of the core web vitals and it's part of SEO in that way. And also Google Ads, it affects your landing page experience scores and things like that, which affects your discounts on what you get from Google Ads. So you end up compensating for a problem that should have been resolved at the hosting level from the very beginning. Instead, going cheap, you get what you pay for, and you get a lot of other problems that you're not aware of, right? So the combination of like the security risks and the slow speeds and all this kind of stuff really pushed me over the edge, and that's why I moved over to Cloudways, because at the end of the day, I'm the one who has to explain everything to the client. So Cloudways actually changed a lot of things for me when I changed over, because now I can like create a new private server in a couple of minutes. I can choose the exact region and location of where the server is located, so it's really fast from the beginning, and I avoid sharing, those security liabilities with 100 other websites, because it's just my client's website on their own private server in the location of their choice. And I don't need to be highly technical to set it up either. I just log in, create a new server in a few clicks, and then I can get a fresh WordPress instance installed, and yeah, it's just super helpful that way. So the second reason is that Cloudways actually doesn't break on you every single time you make a normal update. So as you might know already, if you're experienced with websites, you might find that on cheaper hosting providers like, all the ones that we mentioned before, it's pretty common for a website to break after a simple update, right? So you update a plugin, or you run a small WordPress update or a theme update, and suddenly your website breaks, or parts of the layout shifts around and moves around and stuff like that. Even for the most basic updates, it might be a tiny little update from going from 0.1 to 0.2 on one of your plugins, right? But for some reason, the hosting environment can't actually handle it, and And when that happens, you've got to restore a backup for a previous version, right? So you got to check the website again, make sure everything's working after you've restored that backup because your website's broken, and then you got to move on, and the whole ordeal might take an hour or so to do, and it's a total waste of time. And when that happens, imagine doing that for 50 websites every single month for every single tiny plugin update that you have to do. It makes you scared to even update a plugin, so your website becomes a bit outdated. When it should be really a 30-second to 1 minute update, it can be a whole day thing. It can be more than that, you know? And when you're running a marketing agency, for example, you don't have time for that. You're not sitting there running, you know, full staging workflows for tiny updates like a web development company or a hosting company, right? You're just trying to get real work done for clients. You're trying to get them more leads, more sales, more booked appointments, and you're focusing on getting better at your craft, not being like some tech company working on all the hosting and all the security vulnerabilities and all that crap that comes with it. And that's the part that becomes really draining, because you never know which update is actually going to cause the issue. So you end up delaying them or doing them at odd times just in case something goes wrong, right? So when you're managing a bunch of websites, especially 20, 50, 100 websites, of course the time adds up fast. And so you take that out of your profit margins, you lose a lot of hours fixing things that only broke because the hosting wasn't stable in the first place. So on Cloudways, this is a lot more predictable, because what I find is I can update a live website. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh shit, you should be updating on a staging website. But I actually can get away with updating on live websites and things do not break, right? I can update a simple plugin. It doesn't turn into an entire ordeal, recovery process and things like that. And if something ever does go wrong, it's very easy to restore a snapshot anyway. But I've rarely had to do that in the last 2 years. I've maybe had to do that maybe 3 or 4 times, if that. So it's very, very simple when you're going for a premium hosting provider, because you can move faster and you can keep things updated and you're not constantly cleaning up issues caused by cheap hosting. Now, the third reason is that backing up a website on Cloudways saves a bunch of time for us, simply because it's fully automated and included in the pricing. There's no add-ons that you have to pay for. So even though Cloudways is pretty stable most of the time, there will be times where you might need to roll back the website to a previous state, and that's part of working with WordPress. Sometimes it happens, sometimes something might break because conflicts of plugins change. So what's been great with Cloudways is that I don't really have to think too hard about recovering a website, because I know with full confidence that it already has automatic daily backups. And those backups have been really, really good because it backs up twice a day. So if something broke, I just pick off the restore point from like 8 hours ago or something like that. And normally that's good enough for me. Like, it's been good enough in the last couple of years since we've been going full force on Cloudways. And it only takes a couple of minutes, and sometimes it depends on how big your website really. So before Cloudways, this was a lot more annoying, because on the cheaper hosting providers, you'd end up clicking around on old cPanel tools and then trying to work out which backup actually included the files that you needed. And everything felt a lot slower and clunkier, or, you know, sometimes it would be an add-on feature and you'd have to buy that add-on, or you'd have to buy a plugin, special plugin for WordPress that actually backed up your website. And it's a bit clunkier because it's not all in one tool kind of thing. And the thing is, a lot of agencies end up buying these extra plugins or third-party services just to cover themselves, which is fine, but you know, it's another subscription that you need. And so by going really, really cheap on the hosting, you end up having to pay a lot more anyway, and you get what you pay for. I keep mentioning that anyway. And so when you pay cheap, you pay twice, as some people say. So with Cloudways, everything just is there from the start. It's already included in whatever you pay from the subscription. So you don't need to install anything, pay for extra add-ons. You can, but you don't really need to because it's already covered. So you don't need to manage another tool or log in anywhere else for your backups. And it's part of normal workflow that we have, and it takes a lot of pressure off my team because you know exactly where you can find the backup when you need it. And the SOP for it for my team is super clear and easy whenever a website does break. So the fourth reason is that Cloudways actually has Cloudflare built into it. If you don't know what Cloudflare is, it's a content delivery network that makes your website faster all around the world, right? No matter where someone loads up your website, it's one of those middlemen that actually makes your website a lot faster and more secure. So if you run an agency, you already know it's basically mandatory to have something like Cloudflare in place. So a lot of clients have traffic coming from different cities, different countries, and you need a CDN to keep the website really fast for everyone. And on top of that, Cloudflare does a great job in protecting websites from brute force attacks and random bot traffic coming to your website. And brute forces are pretty serious, right? It can tank your entire website. It can cost millions of dollars in damages depending on how many transactions you do. So with Cloudflare, you get that extra security layer without doing anything special. It's pretty easy to set up from Cloudways. The problem is that most hosting providers don't actually have Cloudflare built into it. So what ends up happening is you set up another Cloudflare account or a separate one for each client that you have, and you add the domain, you change the name servers, or you update the A records, and then making sure that everything is pointing to the right place, of course. But it's a bit of an extra process that you didn't really want to do, and you don't want to set the client up on their own account or set them all up in your agency account. It's not difficult, it's just freaking annoying. It's one of those extra things you have to do every time you launch a website. It gets really repetitive, and when you stack up that time, it does take a bit of time. So on Cloudways, it's a lot simpler because Cloudflare is built in with the enterprise level. So it's already integrated. Whenever you want to launch a new website, you just go into the Cloudflare settings and set it up. So what we do really is we set up a new server, right? And we already have the client's domain by that point. Maybe we set up on a subdomain, and then we launch on that subdomain straight away with Cloudflare, and we change the A records for Cloudflare. So we don't have to worry about launching on multiple places at the same time. And it propagates pretty quickly. It propagates within like 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so. Sometimes it's a lot faster than that. Sometimes it's a little bit slower, but at least there's no extra logins that we have to get, no extra separate accounts. We don't have to juggle different dashboards. We don't have to create different SOPs for it. It's a very simple SOP that you can have all inside of Cloudways, so it's simple for your team as well. And it's also really useful for the cache control in the backend of WordPress, because Cloudways and Cloudflare are connected directly into Breeze plugin. So the Breeze plugin is built by Cloudways, but what happens is, since they're connected or integrated with Cloudflare, it's already integrated so you can clear the cache for Cloudflare inside of your WordPress application. So as you already do when you make bigger changes on the website or update plugins or sections or, text and things like that, and replacing images, you have to clear the cache every single time, and you don't want to jump into Cloudflare every single time on top of like WP Rocket or Breeze to clear the cache. So you're not jumping between many spots. All you're doing is going into WordPress and clearing the cache from there for both Cloudflare and also Cloudways. Now, the fifth and final reason is that support on Cloudways is extremely fast and helpful, which is actually very rare for hosting providers in general, not just the premium and the cheap ones out there. So normally when you need support on the cheaper hosts, you've got two bad options, right? You either create a support ticket and wait half a day for someone to reply on a forum style like ticket system, or you jump onto a live chat and get someone who has no idea what they're talking about, and they copy answers from some basic knowledge base, and they send you links that you've already read and you've already done the troubleshooting yourself, and they always push back on like you have to go and see a developer for this, blah 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 blah. And none of that helps when you're trying to fix something super quickly and a website goes down and stuff like that. And it's not helpful because the client starts harassing you and saying, hey, you got to do this, do that, and there's some sort of panic and frenzy going on, right? So Cloudways has been a breath of fresh air for me, because whenever I open the live chat with Cloudways, I actually get someone who understands the technical side of things, so they don't make me have to repeat myself 10 times and go between different support agents and different departments like they usually do. So what they do instead at Cloudways is they log into your server, they check what's going on, and they actually help you fix the issue. Like, I've had a lot of times where they've sorted out like cron jobs and memory limits and different backend problems without any hassle. Like, they've actually helped install WordFence for me on a few websites. Like, they've actually done it for free. They've actually helped me. And that's the kind of thing that, you really appreciate, especially when it comes from your hosting provider when they're not asking anything in return. So it's those kind of perks involved when you do choose someone who's more premium, like Cloudways, to be your hosting provider. And when you're running an agency, that makes your life a freaking lot easier, especially if you're not a tech guru yourself, you're not a web dev, because you don't want to spend hours like searching forums and guessing with ChatGPT and going through all the server settings and trying to figure it out yourself. And you're here to like make money for your clients and get them more lead sales and bookings. You're not here to fish through all these bloody settings out there. And the bonus reason is that the affiliate side of Cloudways ends up paying for my own hosting and a bit more. So I don't use the agency settings in Cloudways. I actually just set clients up in their own account. I walk my clients through a really short checklist on what to do, and in that checklist I include my affiliate link. And I'm always really upfront about it. I tell them that we use Cloudways and for all of our builds, and it's almost mandatory because we know the system really well. We all have all the SOPs around it. Unless the client has a well-established website, which some do, and they have their own hosting, we don't try to mess around with that. We just say keep to the what's working already. But for new clients who need new landing pages and things like that, and most clients are fine with that. They follow all the steps, they sign up, they put in their details, and we start building their website really quickly because we've already got the streamlined SOPs. And because they join through my affiliate link, I get commission for that, of course. Now, not every client signs up with that link, and that's normal, but I can actually contact my affiliate manager and tell them that, hey, that client is actually my client. I just set them up. You can actually see proof I'm a user in their account. And that's enough to actually cover all my hosting costs. Plus, it gives me some revenue on the side as well. So if you run an agency, it just makes more sense. You know, you're setting up new websites all the time. You're guiding clients through hosting anyway. You might as well refer them to a platform that you actually use and you love yourself. And then you earn something from that natural commission regardless. So they're signing up either way to some hosting provider. You might as well send them to the one that actually works and you prefer, and you make a bit of coin from that referral. Your hosting either supports the work you're doing right now, it creates a ton of headaches, and for me, Cloudways has taken a lot of those headaches away because I run a marketing agency. If you don't know, it's called JRR Marketing, and I teach people at the Conversion Clinic in a school community. And the thing is, I want to focus on marketing. I want to focus on what I love doing. I want to focus on my craft, getting better at that, building pages, running campaigns, and actually helping clients grow, right? I don't want to spend my time fixing broken websites and dealing with clients stressing out something that went wrong again every day, and that piles up for each client that I have. So with Cloudways, things just run the way that they're supposed to, and updates don't turn into a massive mess of restoring backups all day long. You know, Cloudflare is already part of the setup, so that's already good as well. And I can jump on a live chat with support if anything goes wrong as well. So I've always got those layers of backup to de-risk myself. It just keeps things really reliable on my side so I can actually run my business properly. And I believe it enough that I've partnered with Cloudways in this video, and I want to make this because no one really talks about hosting from an agency point of view. But when you're managing a lot of websites, these things make a bigger difference than most people realize. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.